Okay, friends, today we're in most of chapter 23. It's the day we read about the crucifixion of Jesus. So the reading for today would be a good reading for you to go back and also read on Friday. I hope that you'll read it slowly, really reflect on it, reflect on what the meaning is for kind of the world as a whole, but then also what the meaning is specifically for you. And what I want to point towards is one through line that I see here, and something that's it's kind of new for me, something that I haven't really noticed about this before. I think when we look at chapter 23, one of the things that we see is that we see the worst of humanity. But one of the things that we also see is we see the best of humanity. So as you read it, if you haven't already, or if you've already read it, as you reflect on it, just think about the worst of humanity that's on display here. Think about these religious leaders. Not only are they the religious leaders, they're kind of the thought leaders of the time. They're seeking to control what it is that people think and what it is that people believe. The religious leaders at the time controlled the temple, so they controlled the way in which people practice their faith, the way in which people practice their religion. And these leaders were far more akin to today what we would call like the mafia or the mob than what we would refer to as like pastors or priests today. And look at what they're doing. I mean, they are acting out of their desire to preserve their power to the degree that an innocent man ends up on the cross. They're corrupt. You see the worst of humanity in them. Then think about the civil leaders also. Think about Herod here and about Pilate. Pilate, who represents Rome, and Herod, who's a kind of a vassal of Rome. But both of them are civil political leaders. And what did they do? Well, they see nothing wrong in what this man has done. But yet they kind of stand idly by, and in order to promote peace, in order to keep the peace, they allow this man to be killed. And it's not as explicit in Luke, but you do see it more explicitly in other places. There's a crowd of people who are just easily manipulated. And maybe they don't necessarily see what it is that Jesus should be crucified for, but they're stirred up. And they begin to chant, "Crucify him, crucify him," also. And you look at this, and in many ways you see the worst of humanity. And you may notice some things in here that I'm not even pointing out. But what do we also see? We also see the best of humanity. We see a man who is willingly giving himself up to be crucified because he knows that it is actually what will set people free. We see a man who, in the midst of his agony, in the midst of his pain, prays for the forgiveness of those who are inflicting that pain on him. You see, we see the worst of humanity in the people around Jesus. And we see Jesus, who, let's remember, is fully human while fully God. And in him we see the best of humanity. And let's take kind of a deep cut here. Those of you that were with us all the way back when we were reading Genesis, do you remember what it says about humans? Or rather, what it doesn't say? God creates all these things, and after he creates these things, he says, and whatever this was good. But then after he creates humanity, he doesn't say anything. Now, you may have heard growing up that he says very good, but go back and look at it, he doesn't. After he looks at all of creation, he says very good, but after he creates humans, he doesn't say anything. And it seems to leave open the question of whether humans are good or not. And really the question in Genesis 1, I think, is left open on purpose, because it's yet to be determined. Yeah, most of creation, it just does what it's supposed to do. Trees just do what they're supposed to do. Rabbits just do what they're supposed to do. But humans, sometimes we conform to what we were created to do, which is to love God and to love other people. And sometimes we don't. And in the crucifixion story, we see the worst of humanity on display and the best. And because of what Jesus did on the cross, and we talked about this earlier this week, because of what Jesus did on the cross, we can be forgiven for how we have not lived into what God created us to do. And by the power of the Holy Spirit, we can be transformed and conformed into the creations that we were made to be. So, Luke chapter 23, how do we see our heart on display? That bent towards the selfishness and the bent towards the power, the bent towards being manipulated. But can we begin to see in ourselves glimmers of the goodness of humanity also? Can we see in us the way that God is changing us so that we are becoming more and more sacrificial? So that we ourselves are becoming more and more forgiving. May that be more and more true in all of us. May we be more and more changed and transformed. God bless you, friends. Keep with your reading, and I'll see you soon.